The next speaker comes from Norway. His name is Larsson. He holds a chair in criminology at the Police University College of Oslo, and he's a founding member and in the steering group of LEAP Scandinavia, as well as a member of the advisory board of the Norwegian Association for Safer Drug Policies. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'm here today to speak about experiences from Norway and about the drug reform that was sunk. And I'm going to talk about, I got 20 minutes, and it's happened quite a lot of things for the last 3-4 years, so I have to be sort of brief in some of the points there. But I think, at least for the Finns, there's a lot to learn about what happened in Norway, because I can hear from your presentation that quite a few of the arguments and the way of thinking that the police and the influence, the politics and so on is quite much the same as happened in Norway. So if you ever get going on sort of a drug reform in Finland, just be aware. Police will try to torpedo it again. Be sure. To cut this short, what happened was quite surprising, and it was in December 2017. It was stated that there was a political majority for a drug reform in Norway. For many of us, this came quite surprising. We hadn't foreseen it, to be quite honest, and especially the liberal party, Venstre, that was the leading group, but they also got the other conservative parties actually on trying to make a reform. And the main thing for the reform was to go from punishment to health. That was stated clearly. The Minister of Health, Bent Høie, stated when this topic was up that drug addicts shall receive health care and respect, not punishment and condemnation. We are now starting on the task of changing the Norwegian drug policy and the attitudes towards fellow humans that struggle with drug dependency. This was said when he was putting down the commission that later made the report in 2019. So it was sort of the bedrock. We have to go from punishment of drug users to the more health-oriented way. And he also said, look to Portugal. So it was clearly stated that you should go and learn from the Portuguese experiences. That's quite interesting. So, to make this clear from the starting point, we're not talking about legalization here, but what was in the cards was a decriminalisation of use and possession. So, that was sort of the starting point. Norway, I think if you look to Norway, Sweden and Finland, I think Norway is absolutely the country with the highest penalty rates of these. So we are the hawks. We have a long tradition of punishing also users for drug use, and they have a firm belief in the use of punishment, really, when in this field. In other fields we don't. So the drugs have been sort of exceptional in many ways. The report was made in a very short time. It took a little bit more than a year, and this big official report came out, NOU, an official Norwegian official report, in December 2019. And they clearly stated that they wanted a decriminalisation of drug use and possession for all kind of drugs. What they described was quite much the same as what had been going on in Portugal, really. It said nothing, of course, about the market or the sale and so on of drugs, so it was only about these two topics. Drugs were to be still illegal but not criminalized. And I think one of the main points was that they tried to reduce the costs and the pains of using punishment, the stigma. It was pointed out time and time again that the system we have is stigmatizing. that is actually pushing people into a role of deviant and making the problem even worse. And it was a thick report, 350 pages, and it was very, very well documented. So it's worth reading if you know how to read the world language of Norwegian. I think there is a short version in English also. It's actually a very, very solid report. And you could say that the commission was only liberal guys, because even police were sitting in this commission. So we had a quite mixed group of experts and working in the field who wrote this report. Healthcare, not punishment. That was the main line, and it was what pointed out. I have to put on my glasses if I can see what's written here. Of course, then, one thing is to make such a report, but then you have to change the laws. And in February 2021, there was a law reform presented. And the main line in that was that if this had been carried out as proposed, the law change, people who were caught with illegal drugs for their own use would be obliged to appear before a municipal advisory unit where they would receive information about risks and health damage from drug use and offers for help. It was proposed to introduce a fee of Norwegian 2,300 kroner, which is approximately 240 euros for the ones not going to this meeting. As some of you then will recognize, this is much like the Portuguese version, but we also had this fee because we had to have something of a punishment. We had something there because it was critics. But the reporter didn't have the fee. They said, then no one will go to this consultation. Typical Norwegian way of thinking. We need to have some whip to get them there. The police was still supposed to uncover drug use and possession and have access to visitation of people. All illegal drugs were still to be seized regardless of quantity. So, as you see, what was actually sold in as a reform was not that radical. It was, I would say that it was not, as many presented, this is a real radical reform. No, it was not. Actually, it was not. Then, of course, it was a heated debate about the law. I will also point out that 3 days before the NOU in 2019 was officially released, 3 days before, the Norwegian police director stepped out in the media and said, this report is bad. We can't follow this because we're going to sacrifice our youth. Police will now have no means to prevent drug use among youngsters. That was the main line. So it was what they focused on was the prevention, and they also meant this, that police were the ones that should prevent use and was sort of the main actor there. This is quite interesting that the police actually did this, and this was from the top in the police system. So there was a massive critique, and the critique came mainly from the police, and a police organization called the Norwegian Narcotic Police Organization, NNPF, was central. NNPF is I would call them dogmatic organization. It is they work for what they say themselves, prevention of use. So they're on the street level use, but and they have more than 3,000 members. Norway is the size of Finland, so we have like total with civilians and all 19,000 working in Norwegian police, 3,000 members of this organization. So they're a very strong political factor. So the main arguments against the reform were legalizing, that is sending the wrong signals. You heard that in Finland too. And even talking about it made the youngsters believe that now it was free to use drugs, the police said, which of course is bullshit. And they've all been in the media for the last month saying we have a wave of cocaine use in Norway. among youngsters. Research says something quite differently. There's no wave at all. But police say, and the thing is that these police officers are usually members of NNPF. Big surprise there. Because the wrong signals have been sent, so they will use. Police need punishment to prevent drug use. It's a very central line. We can't do crime prevention without using punishment. This belief in punishment is very rooted in Norwegian police. And of course, we cannot gamble with the future of our youth. So, this were mainly arguments coming from the police, but they was taken up by parts of the political system. So, it ended with the whole process was sunk when the Social Democratic Party was they were dependent on them, and it was election year. 2021 was election year. We had a conservative government before that, and the Social Democrats said no. It must be pointed out that the Social Democrats was a divided party. Like most Norwegian parties, they're divided in this question. The interesting thing there is that after this process was sunk, the reform was the law reform was gone. In this process, there came up a lot of interesting debates. One of them was the debate about most political parties in Norway said, well, this reform had been okay if it only had been for addicted drug users. So they actually meant that we should have one reform for the addicted ones and one for the youngsters. The youngsters should be punished while the addicted ones should not be. So there's a political majority actually for not punishing addicts, tired drug users, as we say in Norway. This, of course, sounds very good, but in practical use is hopeless. Because who defines what is addictive? Who's an addict and who's not? And that's, of course, a medical question. And even medics, they argue a lot about this. Very hard to find out. And police are the last ones who actually should decide who's an addict or not. They have no clue, to be quite honest. But this came up. And the second one was that there was a total confusion about police methods concerning searching for drugs, and this became quite heated in the debate on the law, because the chief of prosecution in Oslo, he said that this reform will make the police unable to fight drug use, and then of course people ask, yeah, what sort of methods do you then talk about? And he mentioned some of them, and then the general attorney said, but these methods are not legal when it comes to minor drug use. So there was a total situation where people didn't know what's actually, have we been breaching the law for years now? Have the police actually been doing illegal things? Yeah, looks like it. So the general attorney then had to clarify the rules of investigation and tell them to the police. And this was after he also did research on the use of these methods, because people said, we don't do that. You do rectal exploration of people. We don't look under a scrotum or have searches on the girls, have to strip them and so on. They did, of course they do. Probably do the same in Finland. And this was only users, caught with small amounts of drugs. Sometimes they didn't have it on them either. So it's and of course, so this investigation made by the general attorney found out this was done in thousands of cases, have been done for the last years. High Court also followed up what had been the discussion and said that now it's that actually the politics has changed, because it's a majority not to punish addicts. And so High Court actually came to the verdict in a case where there was a heroin user that he was caught with 4 grams of heroin, and it went all the way up to High Court. There was 2 other cases, well, similar cases. And the verdict came to this in short. The change in practice that I have explained means that drug addicts' acquisition, possession and storage of up to 5 grams of heroin, amphetamine or cocaine for their own use will henceforth generally lead to a waiver of sentencing, which is in Norwegian law and Finnish law also a sort of punishment, but a very mild one compared to what they used to do. The same applies to actual use of drugs. So I wouldn't say that decriminalized the drug use, but they actually at least put the level of sentencing down quite a lot. Earlier this would have ended up with 2 months of imprisonment. So High Courts follow up what the discussion. Okay, a little short on what's happened after this. I have 2 minutes, yes. And this might be interested of some of you, because we have something in Norway called narko-Twitter. Twitter, you know, you are on social media, all of you. If you take hashtag narko-Twitter, you will get into a very, very interesting forum. What happened, of course, was that when this process was sunk, a lot of people got real angry on the police, and especially on NNPF. And they wanted to see how have they influenced the politics, what's been their role in the forming of politics and policy in Norway. And there was a group of people working online, digging in official documents, in all sorts of going into letters, going into money being sent to organizations and so on, from police, from the Department of Justice, from different organizations, to find out, hey, how is this group NNPF connected to the police? Because it's a private organization, it's not a part of the police. And they had a lot of findings, but the finding was very clear. There was unclear lines between the police organization and NNPF. So it was very hard to say what is what. And they were financed by police department, POD, the Department of Justice, and many others. And they had been given millions a year to this organization. And they also got a list of members. So they found out that a lot of these people have been in the media talking about the dangers of drugs and so on. They were actually central members of NNPF, like the leader of prosecution in Oslo, who had told about all the method that they're going to lose. He was actually on top of the NNPF system. It's sort of embarrassing, isn't it? So the whole question is, who is in control of Norwegian drug policy? And this ended up, again, typical Norwegian. We had to make a commission on it. And this commission, rolleforståelsesutvalget, very nice Norwegian word there, very long and fine, made a report on this, and their main findings can be read here. The main findings, our main conclusion is that there has been not been a sufficient separation between the role as police and the role as member of the NNPF. It's been impossible to say if this person has been talking as a member of NNPF or the police. They usually go to meetings with parents and politicians and so on in uniform. The police have left the responsibility for carrying out and organizing training in the field of doping and drugs to a private organization, which also is a very dogmatic and doesn't use research much. They don't care about it, really. Do cherry picking. That the police have allowed both police practice and police policy to be developed by zealots in a private organization is both a democratic problem and a problem for the rule of law the committee stays. So this also you should read. It's a very, very crushing report on the mix here of roles. That was Norway. Thank you.